and this is how like people with high net worth can really have a huge advantage in these types of circumstances, is you can take a loan out on your assets, use that loan, that line of credit, as cash, buy the property, and then refinance it into a mortgage. So you get all your money back.
This man went from selling out of a Marcy house's stairwell to having his company's name sitting on top of the Manhattan skyline. A kid who grew up in Bed-Stuy staring at those glass towers across the river now controls an empire so massive that the same skyscrapers he used to dream about literally house his business today. A $3 billion liquor deal. An art collection worth more than most people's entire neighborhoods. Jay-Z didn't just make it out of the hood, he bought the whole game. But here's the part that keeps this story wild. Every single label in the industry told this man no. In the mid-90s, they looked at Sean Carter and said he wasn't worth a record deal. Instead of begging or compromising, he made a decision that ended up building one of the greatest fortunes in music history. As of 2026, Forbes puts his net worth at around $2.8 billion, making him the wealthiest musician alive. Combined with Beyoncé, the household sits north of $3.5 billion. To understand how a rejected kid from the projects built that, you have to start where it actually began. Sean Corey Carter was born December 4, 1969, in Brooklyn, raised in the Marcy houses. 27 six-story buildings packed into one of the roughest stretches of 1970s and 80s Brooklyn, right in the middle of the crack era. His father walked out when Sean was around 11, leaving his mother, Gloria Carter, to raise 4 kids alone. She bought young Sean a boombox for his birthday, and that machine changed everything. He'd stay up late banging out drum patterns, writing rhymes in a green notebook, earning the neighborhood nickname Jazzy, which eventually became Jay-Z. But the streets were calling too. As a teenager, he got caught up moving product up and down the East Coast, something he's since called painful and dangerous, and openly discussed the damage that era did to his community. But he's also said, repeatedly, that those streets taught him supply and demand, margins, distribution, and reading people, the exact instincts that would later close 9-figure deals with French luxury conglomerates. Same brain, different arena. By the early 90s, he was sharpening his craft alongside mentor Jaz-O and trading verses with Big Daddy Kane, building a reputation as one of the sharpest lyricists in New York. And then came the moment that changed music business history: rejection. Every label he shopped himself to in the mid-90s passed. Nobody would sign Jay-Z. So in 1995, he linked up with Damon Dash and Kareem Biggs Burke and co-founded their own label, Rockefeller Records. If the industry wouldn't give him a seat, he built his own table, hustling up capital, pressing his own records, selling CDs out of car trunks. In 1996, Rockefeller released Reasonable Doubt, now considered one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever made. The sales weren't massive at the time, but that was never the real win. The real win was structure. Jay owned his label, owned his masters, and negotiated every future deal from a position of ownership instead of dependency. That single decision became the DNA of everything that followed. Don't be the talent that gets paid, be the owner that pays the talent. Once Rockefeller exploded in the late 90s, he started stacking businesses. In 1999, he co-founded Rocawear, betting correctly that fans who bought his albums also wanted to dress like him. The brand grew into hundreds of millions in annual sales, and he sold the rights in 2007 for around $204 million. In 2004, the industry that once rejected him made him president of Def Jam Records, where he signed and championed artists like Rihanna, who'd go on to become a billionaire herself. In 2008, he founded Roc Nation, a full-service entertainment company spanning music, sports management, touring, and publishing, eventually landing a partnership with the NFL as the league's official live music entertainment strategist, putting Jay's fingerprints directly on the Super Bowl halftime show every year. But none of that, the label, the clothing line, the management empire, is actually what made him a billionaire. What made him a billionaire was liquor, and it started with a disrespect he refused to let slide. Jay had been closely associated with Cristal Champagne for years, giving the brand free promotion through his music and videos. When an executive connected to the brand made comments seen as dismissive toward the hip-hop audience driving their sales, Jay didn't argue. He publicly boycotted the brand, pulled it from his clubs, and moved on. But instead of switching to someone else's champagne, he put his weight behind a gold-bottled brand called Armand de Brignac, known to the culture as Ace of Spades, and in 2014 acquired it outright. Every bottle popped from that point forward sent money back to him directly. In 2021, he sold 50% of the brand to LVMH, the largest luxury conglomerate on the planet, in a deal reportedly worth hundreds of millions, while keeping the other half. Paid and still an owner. Same template every time. Then came Douce. Around 2012, Jay partnered with Bacardi to launch the cognac brand, running the same playbook, put it in the music, put it in the culture, put it in his own hands at every award show and courtside seat. It grew into one of the fastest rising cognac brands in the country. In 2023, he sold his stake to Bacardi for approximately $750 million, on a brand valued at $3 billion, a single deal that outpaced what most artists make across their entire catalog, touring, and merch combined over a full career. While the liquor aged, Jay was quietly becoming one of the sharpest tech investors in entertainment. In 2013, he spent $56 million acquiring the streaming platform that became Tidal, a move the internet openly mocked as a vanity project that could never compete with Spotify. In 2021, Jack Dorsey's payments company, Block, bought a majority stake in Tidal for around $300 million. He also made an early investment in Uber before the world understood ride-sharing, a bet that multiplied many times over as the company grew into a global giant. He eventually formalized that instinct by co-founding Marcy Venture Partners, a venture capital firm managing hundreds of millions in startup investments, named directly after the housing project he grew up in, meaning every deal that fund closes prints the name of a Brooklyn project at the top of the paperwork. Add it all together: the catalog, Roc Nation, the Rocawear exit, the champagne, the $750 million cognac deal, Tidal, Uber, the venture fund, and in 2019, Forbes made it official. Jay-Z became hip-hop's first billionaire, the same man the labels wouldn't sign in 1995. Now, the part this whole story has been building toward, the skyline itself. Roc Nation's headquarters occupies prime skyscraper real estate in the heart of Manhattan, the most expensive office market on Earth, with Jay's empire controlling floor after floor of glass and steel above streets where labels once told him no. Think about that for a second. The kid who used to look at that skyline from a project window in Brooklyn now runs his empire from inside it. His artists, his athletes, his executives, and his deals all move through the same Manhattan high-rises his businesses now command. That's not a metaphor. His empire is physically stitched into some of the most valuable square footage in the country. The rest of the portfolio follows the same theme. An $88 million Bel Air mansion, a $200 million Malibu compound, one of the most expensive home sales in U.S. history. A sprawling East Hampton estate, years spent atop a Tribeca penthouse in downtown Manhattan, the same borough-hopping kid, just several zip codes up. A private jet worth roughly $40 million, chartered superyachts running close to $1 million a week. A serious art collection worth tens of millions, including works by Jean-Michel Basquiat, a fellow Brooklyn artist whose paintings now sell for as much as $100 million at auction. Even the art follows the same rule that's defined his entire career: never just spend, always own something that appreciates. For decades, the music industry ran on a simple, one-sided model. The artist gets famous, the executive gets rich. Jay-Z looked at that arrangement in 1995, when nobody would sign him, and flipped it permanently. He spent the next 30 years showing an entire generation what the other side of that contract actually looks like, which is exactly why artists today fight so hard for their masters, and why ownership became the culture's favorite word. From a project window in Bed-Stuy staring at a skyline that was never built with kids like him in mind, to running an empire from inside that same skyline with a $2.8 billion fortune and a $3.5 billion household, that's the real story. Not the bottles, not the jets. The fact that one man's refusal to accept no in 1995 rewrote what was possible for an entire culture, and his kids will inherit an empire their grandfather's generation couldn't have even imagined. So what are your thoughts on Jay-Z's empire? Do you think anyone in this generation can run up a business record like this, or does he stand alone? Drop your thoughts in the comments, let me know which deal shocked you the most, and check out the video on screen for more.